Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, the blame game. Lawmakers point fingers across the aisle as both sides scramble to reach a funding deal. Millions are impacted as hundreds of thousands of federal workers report to their jobs without pay. How will this shutdown affect everyday Americans?
I'm Rachel Scott with the latest on the war of the words between the White House and congressional Democrats as the government shutdown continues.
In the wake of War Secretary Pete Hegseth's announcement of his vision for the military, our Martha Raddatz takes a look at one of the secretary's top priorities, the Marine Corps' attack drone team, a small group of Marines tasked with writing a new chapter in American warfighting.
Those squads and platoons are going to be able to destroy our nation's adversaries out to 20 kilometers.
A 20-story building in New York City partially collapses. Debris blankets the neighborhood just as many were leaving for work and school, all due to a gas explosion that caused some of the building to come crashing down. And remembering Jane Goodall, the world-renowned conservationist whose groundbreaking research transformed how we viewed wild animals and their habitats. What she once told us was her biggest concern about the planet we're leaving behind for our children.
If you give nature a chance, it's amazingly resilient.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin this Wednesday night on day one of a government shutdown. Both parties tonight are playing the blame game, and the real impacts could start to be felt by everyday Americans. Vice President Vance called out Democrats, saying they are the reason for the shutdown, and adding that mass layoffs, which are not usually part of a government shutdown, are coming. Sources say as early as tomorrow. Democrats are standing firm tonight, continuing to demand Medicaid cuts be restored and health care subsidies be extended. Parts of the government are closed for business, including tours of the Capitol. So what will the impacts be, and how long will the standoff continue? We'll be joined by a Republican in the House in a moment and a Democrat in the Senate as well. But first, Rachel Scott has the latest from the Capitol Hill.
Tonight, with the federal government now officially shut down and millions of workers facing the prospect of missed paychecks, the White House now saying mass layoffs are imminent.
How long do you think this will go, Mr. Speaker?
I hope it's short.
Sources say House Republicans were told President Trump will start firing federal workers as soon as tomorrow. ABC's Mary Bruce asking Vice President J.D. Vance why that's necessary.
In every previous shutdown, workers have been furloughed, not laid off. So why does the president want to fire some workers and not just furlough them? Why is this shutdown any different?
Well, first of all, we haven't made any final decisions about what we're going to do with certain workers. What we're saying is that we might have to take extraordinary steps, especially the longer this goes on.
Democrats refuse to fund the government unless Republicans agree to reverse Medicaid cuts and extend expiring Obamacare subsidies so health care premiums don't rise for millions.
It is not radical to say we want to prevent the average American family from getting these huge increases.
The White House says Democrats are holding the country hostage.
What you don't do is say, unless you do exactly what we want to do as congressional Democrats, we're taking hostage.
Tonight, millions of federal employees considered essential forced to work without pay, including TSA agents, and some 2 million military troops. 750,000 others are furloughed.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
Willie Joe Price has worked at the cafeteria in the Library of Congress for 44 years.
Electric bills and the gas bill, all of these things went up, so I'm already juggling paycheck to paycheck.
You may not be able to make rent.
Right.
Tonight, the White House turning up the pressure, targeting projects dear to Democrats, freezing $18 billion in infrastructure funding for New York City, home of both Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and blocking $8 billion for energy projects in 16 states that voted Democrat in the last presidential election.
Rachel Scott joins us now. Rachel, I know you've been working your sources. Any word tonight if the sides are all getting closer to ending this?
Yeah, so far there is no end in sight, Linsey, and the government will remain shut down for at least one more day. The Senate is out of session tomorrow in celebrance of the Jewish holiday, and they'll return back in session on Friday. At this point, you have Senate Republicans really trying to turn up the heat, ramp up the pressure on Senate Democrats, especially those in those tough Senate races next year in the midterms. But as of right now, the vast majority of Senate Democrats are holding firm until their demands are met, Linsey.
Rachel Scott from the Capitol for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. The government shutdown, of course, impacts federal employees, mothers, newborns who all need assistance, even those hoping to visit the Capitol. For a wide-ranging look at just how this shutdown could impact you, we go to our Jay O'Brien on the Hill. Hi, Jay.
Bottom line, the longer a government shutdown goes on, the worse the impacts are. During a shutdown, the government divides employees into two groups, what are called expected employees and then what are called furloughed employees. Expected employees are told that they have to show up to work, but they just aren't paid until the shutdown is over. Expected employees include TSA agents, those who do the weather for the National Weather Service, many in the military and air traffic controllers, and the list goes on. Furloughed employees are told don't show up to work, and they, of course, aren't paid until the shutdown is over, too. Now, for those furloughed employees, the White House is now threatening to fire many of them, something that we've never seen in a shutdown before. And while there are hundreds of thousands of federal employees that will be working without pay, the impacts are still expected to be significant. In shutdowns in the past, for example, we've seen long delays at airports because TSA agents, for instance, ultimately end up calling out, not showing up to work because they're putting in hours and not getting paid. That's what we saw in the last government shutdown in 2018. Federal food inspections could start to face delays because of staffing. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those checks still go out, but they could face issues too. It all depends on how long the shutdown goes on. And the same goes for food assistance for lower income Americans or new mothers and infants. That could dry up depending upon the length of the shutdown. That also applies to things like federal flood insurance. A lot of that depends on how long this shutdown lasts, but there are things happening now. The Capitol is closed to visitors. Federal office buildings are closed. The Smithsonian says it's going to start closing next week. National parks, the government says, will try to stay open, but they will face some staffing issues. By law, there still is a group that does get paid even when the government shuts down: members of Congress. Linsey.
All right, Jay O'Brien for us. Thanks so much, Jay. For more now, we're joined by Congressman Mike Flood. He's a Republican from Nebraska, and he's chairman of the Housing and Insurance Subcommittees. Congressman Flood, thanks so much for talking with us. So the House is out of session this week, not back until October 7th. At this point, are you all just waiting to see what happens in the Senate?
Well, I think so. As I see it, we passed a budget unanimously. This is the first time in the last 25 years we've seen all Republicans united, and now this is on Chuck Schumer's doorstep. He did the right thing back in March. He did his political calculus, and he decided to extend the same Biden-Schumer budget that we did then. We're simply asking him to do it again, but this time it's different for him. In March, he paid a high price from his far-left Democrat friends. They were going to primary him. His approval rating went in the tank. So now he's pulling this stunt so that he can curry favor with the far left, and he's using federal workers as hostages. That's how we see it in the House.
You represent an agricultural state. The USDA is furloughing employees and delaying payments for many of its programs. How will the shutdown impact farmers in your state?
Well, I'm pleased to say that the USDA Food Inspection Service is going to remain on the job, although they're not getting paid. We appreciate them working so that we can keep our food supply going. But it is a long-term concern. A lot of farmers rely on these services and the programs that the USDA has. For now, immediately, I don't see any direct impact, but this will be cumulative as it goes forward. So I do expect some potentially devastating effects as we go into October.
Now, Democrats say that this shutdown is happening because the Republican leadership has refused to work with them specifically on subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Premiums, as you know, are expected to more than double if there's not an agreement by the end of the year. That would affect the more than 100,000 Nebraskans who enrolled through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. How concerned are you about that?
Well, we have until December 31, 2025 to fix that. That's a issue that's being handled by the Ways and Means Committee, where they handle taxation. This is an appropriations committee matter that funds the government. Why hold up all federal funding on a fight that we're going to have anyway? And by the way, these ACA tax credits, this is going to be a very difficult one to fix because there's a large amount of fraud, we believe, in the program, and there's also a high price tag, and there are other people that are benefiting from these tax credits. So we have to sort that all out. I would say Republicans aren't even on the same page as we look at that issue going forward. But this isn't about the ACA tax credits. This is about Democrats wanting to spend another $1.5 trillion billion over the next 10 years, including nearly $200 billion for health care for illegal immigrants and other non-citizens. That's simply tone deaf in this environment.
Vice President Vance says Democrats should vote to open the government, then negotiate over the health care subsidies. Do you believe Republican leadership is willing to negotiate over this?
Well, we know we have to. I mean, we're asking this to go till November 21st so that we get Democrat funding to join us. But on November 21st, we have to produce a budget that will have to have 60 votes. So we know there's compromise on the horizon. We know we have to compromise. We are simply asking Democrats to join us in extending the budget that Joe Biden signed until November 21st. On its face, that seems extremely reasonable, given the fact that Democrats have already done that once this year. We're simply asking for it to be done again.
And as we mentioned earlier, you chair the Housing and Insurance Subcommittee. What does the shutdown mean for homeowners?
Well, it's actually pretty bad because the federal flood insurance program lapsed last night at 11:59. Anybody doing a real estate transaction, let's say you're in Virginia and you're trying to buy a home that's in a floodplain, you're not going to be able to close that loan because you won't be able to get flood insurance through the federal program, and that's the only place it's available. So this has potentially devastating outcomes for people wanting to transact business, change homes, buy real estate, purchase anything like that that requires flood insurance, because that program isn't available today for new policies.
Real world impacts there. All right, Congressman Flood, we thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
The Supreme Court is allowing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to keep her job, at least for now. That's pending the outcome in January when the court agreed to take up President Trump's appeal seeking to fire Cook over allegations of mortgage fraud. The decision to let Cook stay on the job marks a sharp break from how justices have handled other cases involving Trump's removal power at independent federal agencies. In those cases, a majority of the justices yielded to Trump's firing power. And here in New York, an alarming scene this morning as a building partially collapsed just as people were heading out for the day. Remarkably, no one was hurt, and investigators say that the rest of the building remains stable, but residents, as you can imagine, are shaken. Our Matt Rivers has more.
Tonight, you're watching the moment this 20-story building in New York City partially collapses. Debris blanketing this Mott Haven neighborhood in the Bronx just after 8 a.m. when many were leaving for work and school.
The explosion inside the building is falling apart.
The entire corner of this high-rise gone. Officials believe a gas explosion from the boiler caused the chimney to come crumbling down.
You can see that shaft here, you can see where the bricks once were. That's completely disintegrated, and all that debris has collapsed down into the courtyard.
The explosion happened in the morning, right as people were starting to go to work and to school. You can see some of the debris falling into this playground behind me. It is nothing short of miraculous that no one was injured.
Look at the side of the building.
Nearby residents stunned. We spoke to Ada, who had just dropped her kids off at school. She said she was terrified she'd see people falling from a hole in the building.
It sounded like a bomb, basically like a bomb explosion. And it was so loud, even if you're all the way down to 149, you can hear it. And it's so scary.
Crews sifting through the debris with canines. Thankfully, no one was trapped in the rubble.
Very fortunate there. Matt joins us now. Matt, you talked with many of the residents at the scene today. What are they saying?
Well, they're very scared about what happened, no question, and they're wondering if it's going to happen again. And part of that is because we know there have been decades of a lack of investment in maintenance in these public housing communities across New York City. Some 150,000 families live in these communities. So, Lindsay, people are scared this could happen again.
Matt Rivers for us. Thanks so much, Matt. Tonight, Hurricane Imelda and the remnants of Hurricane Umberto are fueling powerful waves on the East Coast. Those waves caused the collapse of another home in North Carolina's Outer Banks. Several others already vulnerable because of beach erosion. Dangerous rip currents are happening from Florida to Maine. Our Stephanie Ramos reports from Rockaway Beach in Queens.
With Hurricane Imelda churning out in the Atlantic, tonight, at least half a dozen houses collapsing in the surf along North Carolina's Outer Banks. Roofs floating away, homes reduced to debris in the large swells.
There was one person just bought a house here. People like that is what I feel sorry for.
Hurricane Imelda and the remnants of Hurricane Umberto now threatening the East Coast, sending dangerous rip currents and waves up to 12 feet as far north as Scituate, Massachusetts. Imelda strengthening to a Category 2 as it closes in on Bermuda. Wind gusts near 100 miles per hour.
And Linsey, our weather team telling us Imelda will move through Bermuda tonight with flash flooding and storm surge. Here along the East Coast, we could still see high surf or flooding over the next few days from Florida all the way up to Maine. Linsey.
Stephanie, thank you. Overseas now to the Middle East, where the flotilla says several boats carrying aid to Gaza were illegally intercepted by Israeli forces. Here's our chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell with the latest.
Yeah, Linsey, activists on board this flotilla reporting that the Israeli Navy has begun intercepting, boarding their vessels, even making arrests or detentions. The group of around 40 boats has now entered the so-called high-risk zone. This is around 100 miles or so from Gaza, but it was gradually moving closer to the coastline. This is where previous attempts were stopped by Israeli forces. The Global Summer Flotilla includes activist Greta Thunberg and Nelson Mandela's grandson, and their plan is to try and deliver aid to beleaguered Gazans and to raise awareness of the suffering there. Israel and others say they have offered to take that aid and deliver it to those in need, but that the organisers have reportedly refused. Israel making it clear that it would intercept the flotilla as it has done repeatedly before. Meanwhile, Israel's assault on Gaza City is escalating. The defence minister here saying that IDF forces continue to operate, quote, at full force, warning those who remain in Gaza will be considered terrorists and supporters of terror. The Red Cross ceasing its operations there. Meanwhile, Hamas are still considering its response to President Trump's peace plan, which seeks to end an end to the almost 2-year-long war in Gaza that's now claimed tens of thousands of lives. Linsey?
Ian, thank you. At least 69 people are dead after a powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake hit the Philippines. One video shows a pageant being disrupted the moment the quake hit as contestants scrambled off the stage. Tonight, rescue workers are desperately searching for possible survivors trapped under the rubble. It is the deadliest earthquake in the country since 2013. Tonight, Homeland Security officials are defending the actions of ICE agents who were seen grabbing and shoving journalists outside a New York City immigration office. The incident was captured on video. Take a look.
Get out the
The incident happened yesterday. One of the journalists seen on the ground was sent to the hospital, though no word if he's been released. ABC has reached out to him for comment. Homeland Security Assistant Secretary said the agents were being swarmed by agitators and members of the press, which obstructed operations. One of the other journalists who claims to have been involved in the incident said that they were trying to document the apparent arrest of a woman who was followed into an elevator by ICE agents. An arrest warrant has been issued for Fast and Furious actor Tyrese Gibson. Police in Georgia say the actor and singer must appear in person to face a misdemeanor animal cruelty charge. They say 2 of the actor's dogs got loose from his Atlanta mansion while Gibson was away and killed a neighbor's small dog. In a statement, Gibson accepted full responsibility, adding his dogs have never been trained to harm. Police say that they issued the warrant after trying to get Gibson to surrender the animals. The actor claims they've since been put into new homes. Revered chimpanzee expert and conservationist Jane Goodall has died. Her work changed the way many of us viewed the world around us, and she was a fierce champion for our planet until the very end. We'll share with you what she told us last time we spoke with her. But first, World News Tonight anchor David Muir on her life and legacy.
Jane Goodall was a pioneer. For decades, her scientific discoveries while documenting chimpanzees in the wild was groundbreaking. Her more than 60 years of field research teaching us all about the bond between man and nature. She first traveled to East Africa to study chimpanzees in 1960 at just 26 years old. She was a secretary for a renowned paleontologist, Louis Leakey, and he thought she'd be up for the grueling job. Because she was young and because she was a woman, the local government there insisted that she bring someone with her. And so her mother volunteered.
It was a crazy idea, most people thought. This young girl, no degree, out in a potentially dangerous situation.
She'd bravely leave camp at dawn and search for the chimpanzees, returning night after night without finding them. But she was determined.
I refused to give up. One day, it happened. I could see them on the other side of the valley watching me. Then they'd come closer and perch in the trees looking down at me. Finally, they came right down onto the ground.
It did not go well at first.
My first encounters with the chimpanzees were disastrous because they ran away. They took one look and would flee.
She would eventually gain their trust, documenting for the first time behaviors that stunned the scientific community and the world, charting their individual personalities and emotions, witnessing the chimpanzees embracing, hugging, the bond between mother and child.
A wild chimpanzee mother came up to me and allowed her infant to reach out with that wondering expression in his eyes to touch me. And that's another moment I'll never forget.
There was an older male chimpanzee who she captured stripping the leaves off a twig and using it as a tool to catch termites. It was previously believed that only humans had those skills, making and using tools.
At that time, we were just defined as, the only tool-making creature on the planet, man the toolmaker.
Jane Goodall's work was documented by National Geographic for years. In 1977, she established the Jane Goodall Institute, one of the world's largest global nonprofits for conservation research. She would write 32 books, 15 of them for children, all of them with the unifying message.
Unconditional love. And that's what we can get from animals if we treat them as friends rather than things.
She would travel more than 300 days a year, and it was announced late today that at the age of 91, Jane Goodall died of natural causes while here in the U.S. on a speaking tour. Tonight, Jane Goodall, in her own words, on her life's work.
I think it's been absolutely amazing. I mean, really, just the richness of it. It's fulfilling, and there's a long way to go, and a lot more that I want to do. But I've been lucky, very.
We were lucky to have her. Our thanks to David. We also had the privilege to speak with Jane Goodall on Earth Day in 2022 and asked her about the planet that adults are leaving behind for the next generation.
You've been advocating for our planet for your entire life. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but on this Earth Week, what gives you hope that humanity will be able to pull itself out of this climate crisis?
Well, my reasons for hope are the energy, commitment, and determination, and very often the courage of young people. And that's, our program is in over 65 countries around the world and growing. And then secondly, if you give nature a chance, it's amazingly resilient. So if you take some of these places where coltan and other minerals have been mined to make things like cell phones and so on, then give that place time and it looks terrible. Nature will reclaim it and biodiversity will return.
Just a fascinating woman. Still ahead, drones are an essential part of the arsenal for both Ukraine and Russia, but is the U.S. ready for this new kind of weapon? Our Martha Raddatz has a rare look inside the program, getting America ready for drone warfare.
What we're seeing in current conflicts across the world is we have a capability gap that we just currently do not have organically to the service.
What we see a newly released police video of country music star Morgan Wallen's arrest last year, and my conversation with Mac DeMarco. We're getting all the details on his latest album. Welcome back, everyone. With Ukraine reporting that Russian drone attacks spiked to nearly 6,000 in the month of September. Tonight, we wanted to look at the changing battlefield. Ukraine and Russia have now been exchanging drone attacks for years, but is the United States ready for this new kind of weapon? In tonight's Prime Focus, our chief global affairs anchor Martha Raddatz and our team got a rare look at a small group of Marines in Quantico with a mission to get America ready for drone warfare.
Moving the outpost! On this quiet morning in Quantico, Virginia, these U.S. Marines are on the attack, testing a new and unconventional weapon. It is known as an FPV drone, short for the first-person view. For years considered little more than a hobbyist toy, it has quickly become one of the most lethal weapons in modern warfare, used no more heavily than on the battlefield in Ukraine. In roughly 3.5 years, the conflict there rapidly evolving from one fought with largely conventional weapons to a growing dependence on these. The capabilities of one-way attack drones have been increasing at an exponential pace, with some swarms now using hundreds at a time. One operation in particular showcasing just how sophisticated and destructive these weapons have become. In June, Ukraine sending Russia reeling after the now notorious massive covert drone attack, Operation Spiderweb, decimated nearly a third of Russia's strategic bombers. Russia calling the operation a terrorist attack, responding days later with an assault on Kyiv, more than 400 one-way attack drones of their own. We were there at the time and found safety in a bomb shelter. The Ukrainian drones are cheap, costing as little as $500 a piece. We were allowed to see how and where the Ukrainian quadcopters are made. This is one of many drone production facilities across Ukraine, spread out across the country. We can't tell you exactly where we are because obviously these facilities are Russian targets. We saw shelf after shelf of parts and where the explosives were placed. Production is expected to hit 1 million by the end of the year. Days after the Spiderweb attack, I spoke with Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, about the operation.
For Russians, more than $7 billion.
And the drones not very expensive.
Yes, not. Yeah, we use cheap drones.
He told me as long as Russia keeps up its assault, there are no plans to slow down. Countries around the world have taken notice, and several are now racing to catch up, including the United States.
And all it is me clicking into different warheads.
Back in Quantico, ground zero for the future of American warfighting. Weapons Training Battalion, as it's called, where Marines traditionally train in marksmanship and small arms.
Flew for about 20 hours.
Colonel Scott Cuomo is the commanding officer with a mission.
The Corps is lethal as all hell right now, but every single day, every single Marine's job is to find a way to make ourselves more lethal.
After reading a report detailing the growing drone threat in Ukraine this past December, Colonel Cuomo's commander, General Anthony Henderson, gave him a new order.
Now, there's a picture in the article. He hit the picture with some force. General Henderson is a very, very strong individual, and he said, you're going to make sure that we can do that rapidly. Do you understand my intent?
Just weeks later, Cuomo turning that intent into reality. This is the Marine Corps Attack Drone Team, a small group of Marines tasked with writing a new chapter in American warfighting, using a controller,
enable near arming,
a pair of goggles, and a drone equipped with as much explosive force as a grenade. This team is racing to develop an attack plan for the Marines, furiously creating tactics, testing equipment, and demonstrating just how effective these unassuming machines can be, even when compared to much larger conventional weapons.
I love all the missiles. They're $30,000 to $80,000 missiles. They have a range, generally speaking, depending on the missile, let's say max of 4 kilometers. In these cases, the system that you saw employed here today, no more than $5,000. Those squads and platoons are going to be able to destroy our nation's adversaries out to 20 kilometers.
It's always a challenge when you do something new.
Major Miguel Ramirez is the officer in charge of this team, responsible for making Cuomo's vision a reality. Since its creation in January, the sense of urgency for his team has been relentless.
What we're seeing in current conflicts across the world is we have a capability gap that we just currently do not have organically to the service. What these Marines have accomplished has been nothing short of extraordinary. We went from not having a organic armed small U.S. capability to now the service is looking at potentially fielding this capability in the near future.
There is still much to be done. The United States currently lacks the ability to rapidly produce large numbers of domestic drones like those seen in Ukraine. And while this team is focused on offense, the U.S. military is also working on defense, developing and deploying much-needed counter-drone technologies. Earlier this summer, President Trump signing an executive order to speed up the process, unleashing American drone dominance. In it, saying the Department of Defense must be able to procure, integrate, and train using low-cost, high-performing drones manufactured in the United States.
So today I'm rescinding restrictive policies that stifle production.
Secretary Pete Hegseth responding directly in this video, signing a memo aimed at reducing red tape surrounding drone acquisition and training.
Drone warfare is decidedly here to stay.
Caitlin Lee is a drone expert at RAND who has followed the industry for years.
Previously, the Department of War treated drones much more like sophisticated aerospace systems. We can't treat drones that way, and we don't need to because they're low-cost weapon systems, often made with commercial technology.
Did Ukraine have an edge on us? Sure. Have we moved rapidly in the last 7 months? Absolutely. They're producing 1 million. Well, they weren't producing 1 million a year and a half ago. So if we want 1 million drones, we're America. American industry will respond.
We're going to run through a demo.
Colonel Cuomo and his team are spreading the word as quickly as they can. Vice President J.D. Vance was given a first-hand demonstration this past spring. The Marine Corps Commandant, General Eric Smith, visited with the team shortly afterwards. And on this day, more than 80 senior training officers came to learn firsthand about the new weapons and how to deploy them across their units.
They want to make sure they understand every intricate detail to make sure that they can do their mission. Design lethal, effective training that Marines can pick up their ruck and go and execute against our enemies if required.
The speed of a changing battlefield and the pressure to catch up. These Marines say, regardless of how the next war is fought, they will be ready.
The enemy is time, and time is just something that we just don't have. So we attack this on a daily basis.
The pact that we made with the American people is that we will protect you every second of every day if anybody ever dares mess with us. And so if these are capabilities that are going to help us do that, we're going to go after them.
Our thanks to Martha and the team. Coming up, we're joined by one of the leading Democrats in Congress, Senator Elizabeth Warren, with more on the shutdown and what Democrats are seeking to reopen the government. And the major move by Walmart and what it could mean for your food. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, almost a full day into the latest government shutdown, and the big looming question that even lawmakers can't seem to answer is when will it all end? So with the shutdown top of mind for millions of Americans who stand to be impacted either directly or because of the domino effect of furloughs, we break it all down in tonight's By the Numbers. The latest shutdown comes almost 7 years after the last time the government went dark, which happened during President Trump's first term. The last federal shutdown lasted 35 days and rolled over into the start of 2019, making it the longest in U.S. history. That shutdown cost the U.S. economy $11 billion, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Starting on Wednesday, 750,000 federal employees are expected to be furloughed, while October 1st checks have already gone out to some 2 million American military troops. They may miss their next payday in 2 weeks if lawmakers can't strike up a compromise to end the shutdown. And as Jay explained earlier, members of Congress will still collect their paychecks, an average annual salary of around $174,000 as mandated under the Constitution, though it is important to note that lawmakers on both sides have requested their pay be withheld until the government reopens. Coming up, a major move by the world's largest retailer as Walmart announces big changes to its private brand foods, what it means for shoppers. Plus, several states are suing Zillow and Redfin over an illegal scheme that prosecutors say hurt families trying to find a place to live. Welcome back. We're taking a live look at the Capitol, where the government remains shut down tonight. For the latest on the state of play, we're joined by Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator, thank you so much for your time. Republicans have brought what they describe as a clean, continuing resolution to the floor that would fund the government for 7 weeks. It was voted down again today. Both sides have really dug in, blaming each other. As we sit here tonight, is there any optimism in the Senate about a deal?
Well, actually, let's just back up a little. You know what a clean CR really means under these circumstances? It means the Democrats go along with the fact that Republicans passed a bill in July, all by themselves, no Democratic votes, to cut health care for 15 million Americans and to drive up health care premiums for pretty much everybody in the country. And people are getting those health insurance premium increases right now, starting today, October 1st, that families are getting those. Democrats are just saying, look, it's time to do a budget, to put it together. But we don't think the budget should cut healthcare access for 15 million Americans and drive up costs for every other American. So what we're asking for is not something special, not like some whole new healthcare plan. We're just asking the Republicans to roll back those cuts so that American families have the same kind of healthcare that they had in June, and that continues to be available to them in October, November, December, January. And that's what we're talking about here. And the Republicans have said they would rather shut down the government than help Americans keep their healthcare costs at least a little bit under control.
I want to play what your Democratic colleague, Senator Cortez Masto, said today about whether this could ultimately backfire for Democrats.
And this is why I was against a shutdown. I don't see actually engaging in a shutdown that's going to harm people to help people. Our goal should be to help everyone. And that, for me, is this fight.
Your response, Senator.
Our goal is to help everyone. And right now, the Republicans just want to help a handful of billionaires and billionaire corporations. Remember that this knocking 15 million people off their health care coverage and driving up the cost of health insurance premiums for millions and millions more around this country was all done by the Republicans so that they could give $1 trillion in tax breaks to a handful of billionaires and billionaire corporations. That's just fundamentally wrong. That is not what the federal government should be doing.
Now, we spoke last night with Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito. She said that she's also concerned about the cuts to those Affordable Care Act subsidies and wanted to do something about it, but she also wanted the government to stay open. Now, Vice President Vance today said Democrats should vote to reopen, then negotiate on health care. Do you take Republicans at face value that they will be willing to negotiate once the government reopens?
So remember, the Republicans passed these health care cuts with nothing but Republican votes. Every Democrat voted against them, said, nope, not going to do that. We are opposed to that. And we said at the time, you're fooling around with the budget here. And when we come to the end of the year, you're going to need Democratic votes. And we want to talk about this. So how about we start negotiating now? That was last July. Let's start talking about how to keep healthcare costs down for families, not just send those costs up through the roof for millions of people. And how many negotiations have the Republicans been willing to engage in? Zero. None. And even now, with the government shut down, how much do Republicans want to talk about rolling back those cuts? And, I just want to say, make sure everyone's following what those cuts are. We're talking about 2/3 of the people in nursing homes who currently receive Medicaid. These are people, many of them with memory care problems. They have no savings. And the Republicans say, just cut them, push them out onto the street. Or it's about brand new babies, little babies and their mamas, taking away health care from them. It's about your neighbor who has to use a wheelchair and have a home health aide drop by so they can live independently. The Republicans say, cut them. That is not who we are as a nation. The point of government is not to make life more comfortable for a handful of billionaires. The point is to say these people need their health care coverage, and the Democrats are willing to fight to protect access to health care. Republicans say they'd rather shut down the government than make sure that Americans get their access to health care. I think they're wrong.
Senator, as you know, your Republican colleagues have been citing multiple occasions from years past when you and other Democrats have specifically spoken out against government shutdowns, including this moment from you in 2013.
And in a democracy, hostage tactics are the last resort for those who can't win their fights through elections, can't win their fights in Congress, can't win their fights for the presidency, and can't win their fights in the courts.
How do you square your words from 2013 with today?
Keep playing them. because it is true. And that is exactly what the Republicans are continuing to do. Listen to what Donald Trump has said since the shutdown. Donald Trump hasn't said that he's right about the health care cuts. He hasn't said that he's right about driving up people's premiums. What he said is if the Republicans don't cancel, give up, and do what he wants, he's going to fire tens of thousands more federal workers. He is going to impose as much pain as he possibly can on as many people as he can. And when that didn't work, today he announced he's going to take away infrastructure money from New Yorkers, American citizens who need access to bridges, who need that clean water, sewer pipes, the things they're using that infrastructure money on. He says, I'm going to hurt them because I want the Democrats to yield to me politically. That is hostage taking, and it is wrong. That is a place where Democrats are willing to draw the line and say, no more. It's clear that the Republicans are too spineless to stand up to Donald Trump. But when he pulls that kind of stuff, when he drives up healthcare costs for millions of people across this country, that's when Democrats say, we are drawing the line here. We are here to fight on behalf of the American people.
Senator Warren, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
A toddler's alarming discovery in his front yard. Cue the confetti. We have a record-breaking Wheel of Fortune win, and the fattest bear of them all is crowned. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. In Washington state, a 3-year-old found a live grenade from World War II in his family's yard. The sheriff's department says the toddler took the bomb inside the house where his alarmed parents called 911. The bomb squad safely removed the device, but no word just yet on how it ended up in the family's yard or how long it had been there. Walmart announced today that it is planning to remove synthetic dyes and 30 other ingredients, including certain preservatives and artificial sweeteners, from its private brand foods in the U.S., such as Great Value, Market Side, Freshness Guaranteed, and Better Goods. It comes amid a push from HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to crack down on dyes in the food industry. Kennedy has been vocal about his opposition to artificial dyes, claiming they are harmful and calling for them to be removed from foods and beverages.
Christina, give the wheel a good spin and good luck.
This Wheel of Fortune contestant making history with the largest prize in the show's history. Christina Janik taking home more than $1 million in cash and prizes after a streak of successful spins and puzzle solves.
Pack of coyotes.
Janik says she plans to use the money to pay off her student loans and eventually buy a home. Attorneys general from 5 states sued Zillow and Redfin today, alleging the company's scheme to stop competition in the online housing rental market. The lawsuit follows a similar one filed by the Federal Trade Commission on Tuesday. The lawsuits allege that Zillow paid Redfin $100 million to shut down its apartment rental advertising business and transfer its clients to Zillow, violating antitrust laws and harming renters using the company's resources. In a statement to ABC News, Redfin says it strongly disagrees with the FTC's allegations, and Zillow says we remain confident in this partnership.
I ain't done nothing wrong.
For the first time, we're seeing police video of Morgan Wallen's arrest in Nashville last year.
No, stay right here. You're not leaving yet. You're not free to go. We're investigating the situation, okay?
Police approached the country music superstar, who denied to authorities he threw a chair from the 6-story rooftop deck of a bar. That chair landed just 3 feet from a couple of officers. Wallen initially denied the incident, but later pled guilty to felony reckless endangerment and disorderly conduct. We have a winner in the Fat Bear Week contest. This is one tough bear. Chunk received the most online votes in the competition, which features 12 bears in Alaska eating as many salmon as they can before their winter hibernation. Chunk weighs about 1,200 pounds. It's his first win after 3 previous second-place finishes. We say he's tough because he's been eating all those fish with a broken jaw. And finally tonight, we caught up with musician Mac DeMarco, who shared all the details on his newest album. Here's our conversation. Now to our Prime Playlist Shuffle, where we sit down with the artists who are transforming the music industry. Titled as The Last Indie Rock Star by The New Yorker and The Slacker Rock Anti-Hero by Dazed, the Canadian singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and music producer Mac DeMarco carries his fans through dreamy, melancholic lyrics, with each song having more than 20 million monthly Spotify listeners. His new album, Guitar, focuses on where the artist is in his life today, bringing fans on his personal journey of finding home. Let's listen.
These days I'd much rather be on my own. No more walking those streets that I once called my home.
We welcome you to the show, Mac. Thanks so much
Thanks for having
joining
me.
us.
Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on that video that we just showed.
Yeah.
So you're just shooting all of that on a tripod yourself while you're canoeing through the wilderness in Canada?
I had the tripod in the canoe there, a little ratchet strap holding it to one of the seats there.
Very cool. You just do it all yourself.
That's right.
We introduced you as a Canadian.
Yep.
You just purchased this home in Canada for a few months. How has living in Canada prepared you for the whirlwind of releasing this?
I had a peaceful summer up there. Learned a lot about a couple things I didn't know a lot about before the summer. And yeah, I think that, a little bit of peace. I'm ready for a little bit of madness, and it's been mad.
And prior to Canada, or in addition, I should say, you also live in LA, you've lived in New York. How would you say, or have they, the places that you've lived, really kind of shaped your journey in music?
I've been saying this about LA because when I moved to LA, everyone was kind of like, "Oh, you're in LA now. You're making your LA music." But I think that a place takes a little bit longer than, and it's not immediate for it to seep into something like your art. So, but I think that now LA, I've lived there for almost 10 years, and for better or worse, it has affected me in many ways. And maybe this record is more LA than ever before.
Yes.
But yeah,
okay. All right. Well, kind of like I was mentioning with regard to the video, you did it all yourself. With this record, aside from the mastering, you did it all yourself. Just kind of brag for a moment about what you actually did here from start to finish.
I mean, yeah, I do it. I've always done it all alone. And I like doing it all alone. I believe in doing it all alone. I think that you get a different product if you do it all alone. And I encourage other people to do it all alone. And I think it's, maybe I'm a bit thrifty. Some may call me cheap. But I think that art is about humans.
You've talked before in other interviews about having demo-itis, where you really kind of still like that original first take of the song. What is it that you think that you're drawn to about those original recordings?
I think it's like a magic feeling or something, It's kind of hard to quantify maybe, but yeah, it's just like when something, the first iteration of something to me feels the most natural or something, and I've tried recreating that feeling with the second recording or something, but this time around I figured might as well just, use the one that feels magic.
You have such a low-key, down-home, salt-to-the-earth vibe to you, and you're someone who, as I just mentioned, get your songs have been streamed billions of times. What keeps you so grounded? We have a lot of guests who don't have half the listeners, and they're already have a bigger head.
I don't know. I mean, I would say hats don't fit too well. Head's probably pretty big. I don't know. I'm looking at the screen here, but I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to live a happy life and make cute little songs that mean something to me and the people that are close around me. And if other people further away from me also feel something from them, then I think no harm done.
Well, thank you so much, Mac, for coming on the show. Really a joy to get to know you. Viewers can listen to Guitar out now on all streaming platforms. That's our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.